So without further ado, welcome Maura to the show. Hi, Maura.
Hello, Ed. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. Maura, obviously, some of the things that you do are unique to say the least, but kind of give us some ideas about, your background and tell us a little bit about Artiphile.
Well, I guess first, since I'm speaking in this kind of a very different sort of audience, it's more the financial side, I want to stress that I'm not a wealth advisor and that I don't work in wealth management, but that I believe that art collections managers have a very important place within that sector to help advise art collectors, and we all know that that is a growing body of people with wealth are collecting art. So Artiphile, I founded Artiphile basically out of my interest to work with private individuals in the care of their art collections. Very basically, I came from the museum side. I worked at the Metropolitan Museum, the Boston Museum, the British Museum in London, all focused really on conservation. And after a while working with private advisors, I saw this need, that there was a real something missing in giving access to the private collector to this kind of information and raise the standards of care.
When you think about raising the standards of care, obviously there are a lot of people who buy art and may or may not necessarily know what that care represents. Give us some color on exactly what it means to take care of a priceless piece of art.
Well, I guess you could say that we start with the fundamentals. I mean, an art collections manager is a specialist in collections care. And, you hear a lot about art advisors and a lot of different kinds of professionals within this art space. The collections manager focus really on everything. Well, we do a little bit on the pre-acquisition side, so the due diligence side, but mainly we are responsible for inventory, condition, and preservation of the collection. We make sure the records are all kept in order and together and collated, and even archival material, letters from artists, things like that. I make sure I keep all of that, and I associate it with the object, which is very good and really enhances our understanding and really the value of the object. Once we conduct an inventory by location at all locations and put it together with the documents, then we're in a really good position to know, what you have, where it is, and now we want to find out, what it's worth. And another side thing of my kind of like concurrent with the inventory, I do a condition survey, and that's a really important piece because more than just your list of what you have, you really want to know how is it doing, what is its condition, what are its needs for survival, does it need attention? And we try to then also make a maintenance plan and really look strategically at all the issues that have come up from that inventory and condition survey. So we really take all that. I think of it as really very fundamental, very some of the building blocks of any collections management program. We will then get appraisal, make sure you have an independent appraisal for the works for replacement value or fair market value, depending on your need, or gift purposes. There's different kinds of appraisals that one does for different reasons, but you want to have that in place. And then I really hope that, since we were talking with, from the wealth advisors and wealth strategies, that one would really take all this information to their wealth advisors. Like, I really just want to stress, I guess, that I think a lot of collectors may have held back the information about their art collection, or maybe it's changing generationally. I think there's a lot of the studies that are out there now. U.S. Trust does a big study every year on the insights on trust, on wealth and worth. TFAF, the European Fine Art Foundation, does a study. There's a lot of studies. UBS, the Art Basel UBS Global Market Report. A lot of these studies are out there, and we're learning a lot that there's a shift really in terms of the traditional collectors and maybe the next-gen collectors and who views their art as asset, who's in it just for the aesthetic pleasure. But in any case, either way, we all know art is valuable, and it's valuable maybe strictly, from a financial perspective, but also historically. And we always want to stress that we think it's important that collectors take very seriously their role as a steward and caring for the object.
You mentioned earlier that you weren't, quote unquote, a financial advisor, but to a certain extent you kind of are. If you think about art as an asset class, It takes a special mind to understand the dynamics associated with proper hygiene for art itself. How important is that hygiene in keeping the value of the art?
Oh, well, it's very important. There's no question that condition is a big aspect of valuation. And, you know, I've been in this business a long time, and sometimes by the time I come along, by the time somebody thinks they need to hire someone like me, an expert, a specialist, and pay for that service, some of the damage I'll see is irreversible. You know, not everything can be fixed. And that's the really sad thing. Some things we can treat, but, you know, the cumulative damages of light or pollution, bad conditions and, you know, environmental conditions, there's just a lot of things. Nicotine smoking is what I think about pollution, you know, in a microenvironment. These things can really, really cause a lot of damage.
And you mentioned also, the damage and things like that as far as that's concerned. When you look at what you do as far as Artiphile is concerned, how do you educate those people who really need to know? Because you mentioned you're talking to the quote unquote financial world and financial world, asset advisors, wealth advisors, however you want to classify them. There are different assets within the portfolio. How do you go about educating them as to the importance of this section of the portfolio?
Well, that's a really good question. That's something I guess I'm really at the beginning of looking to do, because I'm more and more thinking that for my kind of service, which is an independent, you know, non-transactionally based service, I'm paid for my time, and I'm only working for my client and that object. I like to think too that I advocate for the object who can't speak for themselves, but I'm obligated to the client, the collector who's paying me, and so I see myself really more as a fiduciary. Maybe more than like an art advisor would be, who's doing the selling and buying and selling. So I think it is important to try to see ourselves working more collaboratively. There are times that I'm working for collectors who will say, well, you can contact my family office. They have all the documents, and I find that maybe they don't. They might have some. They don't have all. And I just think very often I'm siloed as, you know, the art collections manager, the curator or something. And it would be so much better for everybody and to streamline, to really get the information about the art collection, which may, if it hasn't been appraised, and we find that studies show that more than 50% of collectors have never had their collection appraised or insured. So even though there's talk of it being an art as asset, an alternative asset class, it's a tricky asset. You know, we all know the pitfalls, and it's illiquid and this and that, and the transaction costs are high. But I think we can work together, and I think that would be really to the benefit of the client to
Maura, hold on,
get that information
just a second
out there early.
Maura, we have about just a few seconds, 30, 45 seconds left here. If you could sum up in one sentence why it's important to use a service like yours and to make sure that you take the right avenue in doing so, what would that be?
Oh, my goodness, one sentence. Well, I guess we could say risk management.
Okay. Risk management is very important, both on the physical asset side, obviously where you are, and also on the other asset side where a lot of us live there too. And it's very important that we do that in a very prudent and, I guess in this case, a very, very efficient way. Maura, if people wanted to contact you and use your services, how would they do that?
Oh, well, there's a website. So there's www.artiphile, and that's ARTIPHILE.com. Artiphile is online, and I guess that's the best way. That has my email and phone number, and that'll probably do it.
Maura, we're out of time here. I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for educating me and our audience on the importance of a service like yours.
Pleasure.
And we look to have you back in the future, so I look forward to that. Okay?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ed. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. This segment was brought to you by our great sponsor, Lots of Yachts. We'll be back on the other side of this break with the Private Equity Spotlight. We'll talk about Target battling Amazon. We'll be right back.